Hi there, foodies. How are you doing? We are making some really simple lobster mac and cheese today. Let's get into it. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is prepping the lobster. So there are many ways to cut this in half. This, I'm showing you the easiest way because you could flip it over and just cut right through the shell. But this way is really, really easy. It's super safe. All right, so you can just slit through there. And then you can use your knife, sharp knife, make sure it's very sharp, and then just rock back and forth and cut that right through. Now, of course, you want to rinse this with some cool water, and you can use bigger lobsters if you want to. As a matter of fact, you could butterfly them if you want to. Okay, and if there's anything in there, of course, you're going to clean that out, but we're just using the tail, so it's simple. And you can cut these off if you want to. Some people cut it off. We're going to be seasoning the lobster. So because we're putting this on a grill or grill pan, we want to make sure to brush with olive oil so that it doesn't stick. All right, this just, sometimes it might stick a little bit, but this just helps quite a bit. So put that olive oil on there, and then we will go ahead and season. If you're serving the lobster by itself, then there are so many different seasonings you could add, but you do want to preserve that beautiful, delicate lobster taste, so don't overdo it. And remember that we're going to be putting this in the mac and cheese, and the mac and cheese is going to be really nicely flavored too, so you don't want to overdo things. So today, guys, I'm using my cast iron grill pan. You could use a regular grill if you have it, or you could even cook it in a regular pan if that's what you have. The important thing is we are cooking these, but we're trying our best not to overcook it, because remember, it's going to be going in the oven in the mac and cheese. So you just want it to be opaque and a little bit firmer. You want it to still be tender though. You don't want it to be hard and rubbery. If you're using bigger lobster tails than I am, then you might need to cook it a little bit longer, but these are small lobster tails, really quick cook. So what I do is I just grill them flesh side down and then flip them over. And I made a herb butter earlier. I'll leave all the details in the description below. So all the ingredients were mixed together, and all I'm going to do now is just brush it onto the lobster. After you brush it on, you can leave it to continue grilling, or what I like to do is to put some foil wrap over it just to let it complete its cooking and get that beautiful color on the shell and everything. But that foil wrap step is optional, okay? So what I'll do is I'll turn off the heat, but I'll keep the grill pan on that same burner, even though the heat is off, and then cover it for another minute or two, and that's it. Your lobster's done. You don't want to overcook the lobster. So this can be served as is, guys, but we're going to be putting it in the mac and cheese. That's why we definitely don't want to overcook it. You want to cook it like 3/4 of the way if possible, because remember, it's going to go in the oven and heat up a little bit. So brush on some more of that garlic herb butter, and this is really simple, delicious grilled lobster. You could serve this with some melted butter and some lemon slices or lemon wedges. The same garlic herb butter, you could heat it up and serve it with it as well. It's your choice, but this is good to go on its own. But we're making mac and cheese today, so we have some other steps to take. So what I'm going to be doing now, guys, is I'm going to be cutting up some of this lobster into some chunks. But I want to leave 2 or 4 pieces whole just to serve as garnish at the end. So you have a choice. You can cut up all of it and put in the mac and cheese, or you can reserve some of the tails to put on top of the mac and cheese when you're serving it. So I'm just going to cut this in chunks, and then cut up some more, and then we'll set those aside till we're ready to mix them with the mac and cheese. Now, if you want a little bit of texture, just a little bit of crunch on top of the mac and cheese, you can make this Parmesan topping. So it's Parmesan, some melted butter, and some Panko breadcrumbs. This just helps to add, a variety to texture because the mac and cheese is so creamy. So this just adds a nice contrast. And I'm using Panko breadcrumbs. These are much better than the regular really fine breadcrumbs. So try and get these. And then you're going to mix this together. Sometimes I don't even measure this. I just mix it together and then we'll just sprinkle some on top of the mac and cheese later. Of course, you want to cook the pasta of your choice and then move on to making the mac and cheese. We're starting off with the roux, and that is our thickening agent for the sauce. So we're starting off with the butter and then we're going to stir in some flour. You want to make sure that you're using a medium heat because you don't want the roux to burn, okay? So stir this in rather quickly so that no lumps are formed. Just keep whisking and whisking until it comes together. And what you're doing is cooking it for about a minute so that raw flour taste goes away. Now, because we have a hot pot here, I like to add some lukewarm milk or milk that was sitting out of the fridge for a little bit instead of taking the milk directly from the fridge and pouring it into this. Okay, so you want to keep stirring, gradually adding your milk, keep mixing that, and it will get really nice and smooth. Once it looks really smooth, then you can go ahead and season it. For a basic cheese sauce, you can probably just use, your freshly ground pepper and salt and maybe a little nutmeg. That's it. But you can definitely add other things. You can add onion powder, mustard powder, garlic powder. You can definitely customize, but make sure you season it well and don't salt it too much because remember, sometimes those cheeses that we use, they have their own salt too. So be careful with this step. Don't oversalt it before you add those cheeses. After you add the cheeses, you can taste again to see if it needs salt. Of course, I'm going in with some freshly grated nutmeg. Yes, classic addition to white or cheese sauce. It does something. It really does, guys. If you've never tried it, just add it. You won't taste the nutmeg on its own. It just complements everything else. I'm gonna go in with the cheeses now, guys. Today I'm only using some white cheeses. I always use my my yellow cheddar, but this time just some white cheeses. And you have control over how thick this sauce is going to be. The more cheese you add, the thicker it is going to be. So add, keep stirring, check out the consistency, and then decide if you're satisfied or not. And taste again, see if it needs more salt and pepper or if it's good to go. So this is perfectly fine now, guys. Remember, this sauce is completely cooked. So it's not like the mac and cheese with egg where you'd have to bake it for a long time in the oven. This is why I use this for the lobster mac and cheese, because if you had the one with the egg, then you'd have to bake it for a long time and then the lobster would get overcooked. But because this is perfectly cooked, you only need to add it, put it in the oven for a little bit to get some color. So this version of mac and cheese is great for the lobster. Now stir in all the lobster that you want. Remember, I said you could use all of the lobster that you cooked, or you could leave some behind for garnish in the end. Of course, you can use more lobster if you have that, okay? The claw meat is really good. So if you can find it, use it. So once that's stirred together, guys, you want to just pour it in your baking dish. I'm using some small baking dishes. You could use one big one if you want to. So pour that in there, and then we will top it off with some mozzarella cheese and that Parmesan topping that we made earlier. And when it comes to that breadcrumb topping, you can use as much or as little as you want. It's just for a little bit of texture on top. And once you get it out of the oven, look at that. Gorgeous. You just top it off with those leftover pieces of lobster as a garnish. That's if you want to. Remember I said you could cut up all the lobster in the mac and cheese if you want to. And then I just sprinkle on some fresh parsley. That's it. And before you serve this, you can brush on some more of that garlic herb butter on the lobster. Add a few lemon slices and you're good to go. That's it, guys. Really tasty, really simple. So give it a try and let me know what you think, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.